Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with Blue Bear Flutes. Of course, you can find us on the web under bluebearflutes.com, here on YouTube, Blue Bear Flutes, Blue Bear Arts, as well as on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Let's see, we're also on Pinterest and what was that other one? Reddit. Oh yeah, I always forget Reddit. Reddit's pretty good too. They have some really interesting stories, and I love the comments people leave there. Anyway, gosh, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. Anyway, today's video, of course, as we make a lot of videos on Native American flute making and Native American flute playing, today is actually a follow-up with a few promises that I've made probably over the years about how to make PVC flutes. We've had countless people ask me these questions about making PVC flutes, and I usually turn them down because, honestly, the first, I think, PVC flute I ever made was our PVC 4-hole whistle, which I made in a video just a couple of weeks ago. So having said that, we've made PVC 4-hole whistles since then with some groups like Boy Scouts and a few other groups that wanted to make a really simple whistle. And the thing that I like about the PVC whistles isn't the simplicity of the material or how easy it is to get a hold of or any of this kind of thing. I like the fact that I can stick that PVC 4-hole whistle in my pocket, and you don't have to worry about whether it gets rained on or if you're swimming or whatever. It's made out of PVC. All I have to do is shake the water out of it and play it, and it works great. So a lot of convenience in that, and of course made out of PVC too. If any dirt or anything gets lodged in it, just tap it on the table. It's very durable. There's a lot of convenience in it. I'm not planning on selling them anytime soon, but it is something fun to use as a material to make them, because especially people like the bushcrafters that like to build things that they can stick in their backpack with them and take them halfway across the world, it's very convenient for that. Having said this, there are countless people who have made PVC Native American flutes long before I even considered it. Maybe not as long as I've been making flutes, but at least they've made them out of PVC. And the reason I didn't start off doing that is simply because I grew up in a bamboo and river cane forest, and I had materials at hand that were natural growing around me. Not only why should I not buy something that I don't need when I've got it growing beside me, but most importantly, the materials I used were ones that were native, that were indigenous, and it was just so convenient to start working with something like that. So we've learned a lot since I've decided to start making this particular video, and the things that I've learned, I'm going to show you some of the steps of them. I too do make mistakes, so I wanted to show you that. Before I go any further though, I would like to show you one of our longtime subscribers and good friends on Facebook, and of course YouTube, and a customer and all that kind of stuff, actually sent me a PVC flute that he made about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. It's amazing. When I first played this thing, I thought, wow, you know, this is the way to go. It's pretty cool. It's still not wood, but it's amazing. It really is. So I'll play it for you. This is an F sharp, as it says on the back of it. I haven't looked at the tuning because I don't really, it's not my concern. But it's made out of a, looks like a 3/4 inch piece of, I don't know, I guess it's probably Schedule 40. It's good looking tube that's been sanded down on the outside so there's no markings, because of course PVC usually has these labels all over them. But I'll show you what it sounds like just to give you an idea. Now, for a lot of you, you're probably overwhelmed and thinks, wow, that's amazing. It is a really great PVC flute. It really is. To me, I hear the crispness of the sound, of the tone, and it's not tinny. Tinny is something we always want to stay away from if we can help it, although a lot of extremely hardwood flutes have a very tinny sound, because hardwoods, in my opinion, are not the best resonant wood material to make flutes out of. I like to use softer woods, and the hardest thing I believe that we normally make flutes out of is like our pine low A here, which is a really big mamma jamma, but it's made out of pine, and pine is a medium hardwood. It's not really super hard. Its hardness level is considered to be medium, and it's a fairly good wood to make flutes out of. I prefer the softer cedars, especially Juniper is one of my favorite woods, very soft material. I've made flutes out of tupelo. Tupelo has a heartwood and it's kind of like a core on the inside that's hard as iron, and the outside is almost like cork. It's what duck carvers use to carve their wooden ducks out of. And it's a great wood, in my opinion, to make flutes out of. So soft, I kid you not, it's been 30 years ago. I made a flute out of it, set it on top of my giant console TV in the sun, and it was propped up against something. And as it sat there, had this little bend in it, and I thought, wow, this stuff's really soft. So I turned it around the other way and left it there for another day, and went back into shape. I know the sound effects aren't exactly the way it sounded, but anyhow, so here's the F-sharp flute that my friend made. A pretty good sounding instrument. Once again, because it's PVC, there's some things that you gain and some things that you lose. Then also the block will go around like this because of the way the block is designed. There is one other, come to think of it, video we have made on making a PVC flute, and it was our bow staff. That was my actual first ever PVC flute I made. In that video, I used my Forstner bit that I do in my drill press and flattened this area out with it. It was very convenient. It worked really well, and it gave us a little backstop here that our block would rest against, which was convenient as well. And my friend here has his block with the track built into the block, not into the flute. We're going to do ours for this particular demonstration a little differently, and I think that probably leaves me to tell you. Well, first off, before we go any further, people today, currently, what is this, 2018 or whatnot, and I don't normally like to put dates in videos, but I have to tell you, for the last 10 or 20 years, people have been making PVC flutes. When Native American flutes had become kind of popular, PVC was the next thing to happen because it's simple and it's round and we can all get a hold of it. The interesting thing I find is that some of my friends actually make PVC drone flutes, which is just amazing. You know, it's that people would do something like that. They've made all different shapes and sizes. I'm not aware of, there's probably somebody out there that does it professionally. However, I'm not aware of anybody making a PVC low A, and that's what I had a request for, so I thought, hey, let's see if we can't do this. Now this flute, you'll notice, has a piece of PVC on the top up here that I've actually cut off the end. I split it, which is this little split. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. And I just slid it down. That's my block. My track is actually built into, a little sawdust there, built into the flute itself, not into the block. I'll show you how to do that in just a moment as well. Very simple. And then the fingerings. What many of you may not know is changing from a wood flute to a polyvinyl chloride flute has caused me to have to change my fingering, my finger hole placement a little bit. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. And in doing so, I had to make some adjustments. So this one here is kind of boogered up with tape, which I've seen so many people that made flutes out of this material use tape to cover up their mistakes, to go and find where the hole belongs, which is what I did. Because, and let me tell you why, the way that this particular material responds to the fingering placement, as well as the size, is a little different than my standard 1 1/4 inch inner diameter that I use for my low A flute. The size material I used, the closest thing I could find with almost a 1 1/4 inside diameter was a piece of 1 inch PVC. They of course sell 1 1/4 PVC, they sell it in 1 1/2 and so on and so on. I found this one to be the best solution, so that's what I chose. In doing so, that's where my finger placement actually had to be moved just a little bit on just a couple of holes. Very simple to do, and so I'm giving you guys this pre-ramble because if something happens that you look in my flute making book, you say, that's not where the fingerings go. It's not, because they're not made out of PVC. This is polyvinyl chloride. Anyway, I'm going to quit saying that word. So, to give you a little, demonstration of this guy, make sure I've got my fingers on the holes, because I do have a couple of holes that don't belong there. Now, if you'll notice, 2 of these holes sound a little odd, but that's because there's so much tape around them. There's a minor air escape, there's some shape differences because the holes exist, and there's some tape clogging up some of the holes just a little bit. And when I put it on the tuner, it was perfect. So I thought, hey, this is what I'm going to use for my demonstration model. And we're going to build a brand new one so that I can keep this here as my prototype PVC low bass A flute. Really is a serious bass flute. So anyway, let's first talk about some measurements, and from there we will go over to drill press, and I'll show you where we have to go next. So you can vary the size of this slightly depending on how long you want your mouthpiece to be. My arms aren't 20 feet long, so I made kind of a short mouthpiece, something to consider. And we're going to measure first the length in its entirety of this particular flute. And everything is relative, so don't worry if you're off a millimeter here or there. It's not going to make this flute not play. The thing that will make it not play is a few mistakes made around the track area, and we'll get to those. So what we have going on is the entire length of this particular piece of tubing is 31.5 inches. That's 31.5 inches, about 800 millimeters. That's a long piece of 1 inch tubing. Now, I should mention also, when I was buying this tubing, I had to ask for help to find it at my local retailer. You can get it here in the United States at just about anywhere: Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, your local hardware store, any place I've missed. There's tons of hardware stores that sell this kind of stuff. But I got Schedule 20. Schedule 20 is the lighter grade. It's not heavy. It's a very thin-walled material. Schedule 40 is the next size up, and I don't believe they even really sell Schedule 80 to the public anymore. I haven't been able to find it, not that I've been looking for it a lot. But Schedule 40 is heavy-duty stuff, and if you picked up a piece of it, compared to this one, it would be about 1.5 pounds versus this guy, which is about 6, 8, maybe 7 ounces, something like that, 8 or 7 ounces. So the wall thickness is important. The reason this is important is because this material, being made for plumbing, has countless applications and fittings that need to be able to fit the outside of it. So the outside of all the different tubing thicknesses are the same. The inside is going to be different. And there was such a difference in the thickness between a Schedule 40 and a Schedule 20. That's why we chose Schedule 20, so that it would have a thinner wall, a larger inside diameter. So if you've heard my talk about that enough, the next thing we're going to talk about is the spacing of these holes here. We're going to drill one hole at, let's see here, 3 3/4 of an inch, which is roughly, what is that, about 95 millimeters, give or take. That's going to be for our sound hole. And we'll drill another hole here at 14, which is the first fingering you come to, 14 inches. Roughly 355.5 or 356 millimeters. The next fingering is going to be at 15 3/8 or 392 millimeters. And then the next fingering, which is the third finger from the top finger hole, 1, 2, 3, counting the top finger hole, is going to be 19 5/8 inches or 498 millimeters. The next fingering is 21 and it looks like 21 3/8 inches or 543 millimeters. The last fingering, the fifth fingering on this flute, is 23 1/8 inches or 580, looks like 587, give or take, 587 millimeters. Now, up here at the top, I should tell you that in order to make this flute play and make it an easy build, I actually drilled the sound hole, which I told you a moment ago, its measurements, it's more like 3 3/4, I think is what it was from the top. About an inch prior to that, I put another hole. This hole can be a number of different lengths. That would make your track different lengths. It can be short. Some people believe short is better. I can tell you from a beginner standpoint that making a short track may not make it easy for you to make it play. It might, just depends on which one you hit right off, if you're lucky. But I usually make mine about an inch. You can make it 2 inches. I've actually seen some of the original traditional flutes that were made that had 2 and 3 inch tracks. So you have a number of variances here. I always get emails asking about how long the track should be, so there you go. Mine's about an inch, give or take. So just measure from the center of your hole here, and it should be a round hole. We'll get to the square part in just a second. Go up about an inch, and there you go. So the next thing we're going to do is go over to the drill press and see if we can get this one here started. Okay, so first off, we're going to start with a 1/4 inch drill bit, and we're not going to drill these 2 sound holes yet because we'll use a different bit on those. Next, we'll drill the first fingering, which is right here. Then the second one. We'll skip the third one. Then we'll drill the fourth one. And the fifth one. Once again, making some adjustments, I learned that the third fingering there would actually be a little closer to the fourth and the fifth one if I used a bigger drill bit. Because that stretch on those last 3 fingers there is kind of a challenge, I guess I should say. So now I'm using a 5/16 drill bit, which I'm first going, whoops, I'm going to have to lower my tool here. There we go. So I'm going to use this 5/16. Now I will warn you, you don't have to use power tools to do this. You know, people have been drilling holes by hand forever and a day. I've shown some videos on how to make holes with a pocket knife. You could use awl. There's so many other ways you can do this. If you do use a tool like this, please make sure that you're wearing safety goggles like I am, and make sure that you're being very, very careful and that you're qualified to do this. If this is the first time you've ever built something, you may want to ask someone for help. And I'll tell you one other little thing. I make drilling PVC look easy. I've been drilling, as I mentioned, in bamboo and river cane for most of my life, and I'll tell you that drilling anything that's round is difficult freehand like I'm doing. Most people build a little V-groove stop to put your PVC in, and I'm sure you can find out how to do that pretty easily, but just to save time, everything I'm going to do it this way. So 5/16 drill bit is going to be the sound hole and the air supply hole, and then it's going to be our third fingering. That's one thing that can happen. Not the only thing, mind you, but it is one thing. I might like to mention that PVC jumping on you like that, or a round tube jumping on you like that, is the least of your worries. Usually it rolls when you try to drill it, and that's why they make the V blocks to hold them in place. There's so many things you can do, but like I say, that's what we did. So we made 2 round holes there. Let's take it back over to the other table. I'll show you how to cut those square holes out, and we'll go from there. So we have the 2 5/16 holes up here at the top, and what we need to do now is to square them up, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. There are a number of ways you can do that. You can actually do it with a, little knife here. You can do it with a pocket knife. You can do it with a hobby knife. You can go in and just V it out until you can't stand it anymore. But I'll be honest with you, it's a lot quicker since I have a Dremel. I'm going to go ahead and use a Dremel to do it. It's not, of any detriment to the flute's playing if you leave the holes round. I like to make them square because it's a larger surface area and it gives you a much better sound, in my opinion. It will at least make it louder. But let's do this the right way and the easy way if we can without getting hurt. I'm not telling you to use a Dremel, mind you. This thing here, I have cut my hands up so much with the Dremel in my life. And I say Dremel, but I mean rotor tool. It's whatever brand it is, it's still just as dangerous. So be careful with one of these. Okay, steaming these glasses up. And next, I'm going to take this tool, get some of the PVC off my face, and I'm going to clean the hole up a little bit. If you want to see some of that, I can come over there closer to you. Let's see. Just carefully. You don't want to cut yourself. That is always the last thing. I don't even think it's the last thing I want to do. I'm going to do it all. Not the first thing I want to do, not the middle things I want to do. I don't want to cut myself. Just squaring up the sound hole so it's nice and neat. Simultaneously squaring up what's going to become our track area here. This is a brand new knife blade, so hopefully that will help us. There's a measurement here I didn't give you yet. Just clean this guy up a little bit. Does this back hole have to be square? Doesn't have to be. It's better if it is. Keeps turbulence from occurring. Okay. So I will tell you one little secret about flute making. The size of the sound hole is a relative proportion to the size of the diameter of the flute. So in other words, a big diameter flute should have a big sound hole, and a small diameter flute should have a small sound hole. Will they play if it's not like this? Yes, it'll play if it's not like that. Will it produce the absolute best quality sound that it can? Probably not. It's possible, but it's unlikely. It might make it a little harder to get it to produce sound. One thing I'm going to do right now, let's see if you can see this edge right here. I don't know if you can see that really good. But this edge is not exactly sharp like I like it. It's also rounded, which some PVC flute makers will flatten this off. At least some of my friends have told me they've done it. I'm just going to cut this out with my knife very carefully. You can use a file. As a matter of fact, a chainsaw file, a round file, works great on that kind of thing. But my chainsaw file is about 20 feet over that way, and I have this knife in my hand. Anyway, let's see. Just a little bit right there. Kind of feel like Gollum trying to reach for the ring, you know? He had so much determination. One little trinket that he wanted. Okay, that's not too bad. And of course, I usually come back and clean it up a little bit with a jeweler's file, which these guys are usually pretty easy to get a hold of. That looks pretty good. I can tell by the way my file sits in there at what angle that it should be a relatively nice knife edge. So that's what we've done. And that's about it as far as the flute part itself. The only thing we have left to do is put this plug in there that I made. The plug I made out of a piece of wood. Now, if you find while you're at the hardware store getting your PVC, the right size dowel that fits your PVC, then you're going to be in good shape. You can just buy the dowel for it and put it in there. I made my plug by hand so it would fit a little bit tight. And the reason I did this is so that it helps to seal everything off. And I believe this one is a little tighter than the first one I used. Wait just a minute. Maybe if I clean this out. All you plumbers are out there laughing at me because they make a reaming tool to do this. Anyway, hey, look at that. Pushes right in place. So it does that, and then, let's see, I'm going to, maybe I'll hold it down here where you can see better. Usually, I set this on something like my stool here and hit it with a hammer, but I want to make sure you can see it good. There you go. That's not too bad, is it? So, let's do that. Let's see if I can push it. Yeah, I can just push it. Oops, too much. You know what happens when it gets too much? You put the dowel on the other end. This is just a smaller dowel. There we go. That's a little bit big of a hole there. I like to push it down just a little from here. It gets real easy to push where that sound hole is because the PVC is weaker there now than it was. And that should be good. Now this isn't a perfectly square hole, it's a little rectangular. It's wider this way and narrower that way. Typically, I like to make my holes relatively square until we get to a certain size. When we get to a big flutes are usually better if they have a narrow area with a really wide sound hole. And of course the track has to match the size of the sound hole and whatnot. The next thing I'm going to do, hoping that I've got this guy in the right place, not even testing it, I'm going to go ahead and drop some super glue in here so it can start to set. The super glue that I'm using here sets really quick. You can find some that goes slow. This is not gel, it is liquid. Gel is good for some things, liquid's good for others, and this little tube of liquid is out. And I dripped some up in the top up here because it's going to seal the wood for me. That way we don't have to worry about moisture or anything like that. It'll just go right on through the flute. Let's see. There we go. So now it's got like a perfect gasket around it. I'm going to do the same thing to this other side, but I also like to keep putting it on the track area here. And now we have whatever thickness of the wall of your PVC, we have that thick of a track. On my other one, when I was making it, I tested a little bit and decided that I wanted to make it a little thinner. So what I did was I added a couple layers of paper with super glue on them, and that fixed me right up. You can experiment with a number of different ways to do that yourself, but right now I'm just letting the glue run around in there. Anyway, you can always experiment with that kind of thing. But for this build, like I say, for this video, I'm just going to do it this way. As a matter of fact, I'm going to steal the block of this flute. And let's see how she plays. It gets warm too. That super glue gets really hot whenever it reacts with carbon, like the wood. Now, this is one thing too you want to notice. Where the block should fit versus the area of the sound hole. I found that having this in the middle actually puts the flattest surface of the block up on the top. If we curve it over to the side, it'll be a little bit more curved. Just kind of simple physics. And I also find that setting the block back about 1 millimeter or 2 from the edge of the track itself helps play better. But you can experiment with all of this and you should be able to really get something good out of it. Let's see. Gosh, that's a long stretch. That's pretty good. Super glue fumes, a little too much. So this is a bass A, low bass A flute made from PVC. As I mentioned, something you can do is layer a piece of paper up inside of there on top of your track area and a little bit of glue, and you can push it down on the edges so that it fits in there nice and neat, and cut off any excess that you have. Anything that you can do to build the flat part of the track up so that it's not, what is that, about 2.5 millimeters thick. Anything that you can do to make it a little thinner will make it play better by leaps and bounds. One other thing that helps too, after you've done that, is to sand this or file it if you can. Just a slight little bevel, making the air curve down a little bit so that it splits better when it goes up. And you can even file some of this flat with your file. Once again, a simple build, and I'm going to give you some instructions on how to make one in the key of D, in case you got some extra PVC laying around. Not too shabby. Doesn't really sound as good as my wooden flute in the key of low A, but still a really good flute. Here's one in the key of D I made while I had some free time. simple enough to do, and I'll show you the fingerings and measurements and everything in just a second. I think, in my opinion, it actually sounds better, but it's because of the smaller size of the flute makes a better sounding instrument. Now, of course, too, I did not layer any paper inside of this one, as I mentioned that I could do. And layering that paper inside of there builds the track up a little bit. It'll give it a little bit more precision airflow and will sound a ton better. So let me give you some measurements here on this guy real quick. I'm making one in the key of D. And once again, you can make the mouthpiece whatever size you want, but from the top of the flute to the bottom of it, mine is 20, let's see, I'm going to say it's 24 inches. Into the sound hole, which is not the first hole, that's the air supply. The sound hole placement is at 4 1/8. That's the center of the hole. Once again, very, very simple here. The first fingering you come to is at 10 3/4. The next fingering is at 11 7/8. Then we have 14 and shoot, right in between 1/8 and 1/4. I'm going to say it looks more like 1/8 there. You can count your 30 seconds if you like, but really in between 1/8 and 1/4 will work just fine. So 14 and 1/8. The next fingering is 16 and 1/8. Then the last fingering, the fifth hole, going from top to bottom, is 17 1/2. And those are all the standard measurements. Of course, the metric is the first hole to your air supply there is, let's see, what is that, 105 millimeters. The first fingering is roughly 272 millimeters. The next one is, give or take, 300 millimeters. The third fingering is 374 millimeters. Then we've got 410 millimeters. And then the last fingering is roughly 445 millimeters with the length of the flute at 555 millimeters. So I hope that helps you guys. Oh, and I almost forgot to tell you the width of the sound hole. Once again, relative to not only the tone you're making, but also the size of the flute and what have you. The one on this D flute plays best, in my opinion, if it's roughly 3/8 of an inch wide. Almost 3/8 of an inch square. And even though the size of the PVC is the same because it's a larger diameter or larger lower tone flute, you need to make a little bit wider sound hole. This one here is roughly 1/2 of an inch wide. It will play if you make it only 3/8. May play better one way or the other. You're welcome to experiment. So the sound hole itself is about 1/2 an inch wide on the low A bass flute, whereas the one here in D is basically 3/8 of an inch wide. Lots of experimentation, like I say, you can do, and I think you guys will really enjoy playing this little instrument. Some of you might be the first time you've ever had or played a low A bass flute, and I think that might be kind of a challenge, as it is for me as well, to stretch those bottom fingers out as wide as they have to go, and also the amount of air it takes to play it. But of course, too, as I said, if you make the track area a little shallower by putting the paper layers in there, then you may not have to use as much air to play it. So I'm going to spend some time doing on mine to see if I can't make them a little easier to play. Oh, one other thing too, on the D flute, this hole here is 5/16, 5/16, 5/16, and these last two fingerings are 1/4. So that might help you out a little bit. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please make sure you check us out on social media. As I said, we're on just about everything under the sun. So if you don't find us under Blue Bear Flutes, you'll find us under Blue Bear Arts and the like. And we make a lot of Native American flutes. We make a lot of different types of Native American flutes. Some you guys have never even seen, some that aren't on our website, some that are just things that you've only heard in legend we make. And we also are going to be making videos about those really soon. So thank you so much for stopping by, spending some time with us, and learning how to make a PVC low bass A and a low D Native American Flute. We appreciate you very much. Check us out on our website, Facebook. Send us a message. Come on, talk to us. Let us hear what you got to say. Y'all have a great day. Take care. Charlie Mato-Toyela from Blue Bear Flutes signing out.